The Stony Tombs have become a favorite for many Diablo 2 players, searching for treasure aplenty. It's filled primarily with slow-moving undead skeletons and zombies. Being in just Act 2 so early on in the game, it's also occupied by largely weak mobs to slaughter away to your heart's content. Located right outside of Loot Glen, it's also relatively easy to find in the rocky wastes. The tombs are essentially, in many ways, the ancient tunnels, so to speak, for primarily fire-based character builds, sprucing up the game a bit for these builds, offering viable and efficient magic finding routes for characters that otherwise are heavily restricted in hell difficulty, due to, well, demons literally living in a lake of fire, offering plenty of fire immunes throughout your time playing. The tombs also at times can be deceptively easy, but make no mistake, you can in fact run into trouble down in these dark, damp, forsaken halls, especially on higher player settings. It's one of the few areas in-game where poison resistance actually ends up being quite beneficial. The skeletal mages on the level 2 always spawn as poison magi, and although weak and easy to kill, not being physically imposing, in terms of health, having low poison resist on your character despite chugging antidote potions actually can be quite annoying when running into these pesky skeletal undead. Scarab beetles also spawn down here, along with regular skeletal horrors, the typical skeletons. But like anywhere in the game, when some packs spawn, the right or wrong affixes, depending on how you look at it, can pose a serious risk to the player. The area offers plenty of chests and armor racks to pop, and the super unique decayed mummy named Creeping Feature to top the runoff with. Patch 2.4 turned many new areas into TC85 areas, basically meaning the areas have the chance to drop any item in the entire game. All of the runs in this video were executed on Players 8 difficulty. I'll show my gear on all my characters as I use them in these runs. These are all on my offline, solo self-found characters I've been playing since launch. I'll have the run number and my magic find at the time of playing displayed on the screen. I won't be mentioning every single item found for clarity's sake. Certain items I'll list a couple times before not mentioning them on any subsequent finds. Depending on rarity or usefulness, I'll only be listing runes or up. Without further waterboarding of an intro, let's just jump right into the loot and see if RNJESUS bestows us the loot goblin's blessing. I start the runs with my fireball source. She has 463% magic find and is the highest MF character I rock in these runs. She uses an Istid Oculus, -14 enemy fire resistance flickering flame in a diadem. Mara's Ami, 35 FCR Spirit Monarch, 48 War Traps, 30 MF Nagel Ring, upped Gold Wrap Belt, 10 FCR Ring with some other stats, 40 MF Chances, Talrash's Armor with a 5/5 Die Fire Facet, and of course a CTA and a Spirit pre-buff on the offhand. The charms are random 5 to 7% MF small charms. Annie, a Source Torch, 2 live fire skillers, and of course a Geed's charm. My mercenary's gear is straight to the point. Treachery, Ethereal, and Dariel's Visage with a fire resistance plus Ias Jewel, and the cream of the crop for really any fire build, Infinity in a Ethereal Giant Thresher. The runs start off mild with Trangul's gloves on run 13. Nothing crazy, but good gloves for casters and best in slot for poison necros. The very next run I get a unique ring that ended up being just a dwarf star, and from now on out I will only be mentioning unique rings identified as something more interesting. Also a white monarch that could be Larzuk for a spirit base. Run 17 I snag up an already good to go 4 open socketed Monarch. I won't be mentioning any more Monarch bases as I really do find tons of them. On run 19 I find Mavina's Embrace armor. Run 21 gives me my second ever found Ethereal Reaper's Toll. It rolled 196 ED. Eth Reaper's Toll is of course the best in slot for most melee characters for your mercenary, or they can be socketed with a Zod for a Reaper Fury Werewolf, a character I really want to try out one day, but the ED not rolling great on this doesn't really warrant it as a candidate worthy of a Zod rune. Still a cool find nonetheless. On the same run, I find a Jalal's Mane. Eth T-Strokes drop on run 32. This is actually probably my first Eth T-Strokes. It's too bad it wasn't Eth Titans though. Eth T-Strokes are pretty much useless because they don't have the replenish quantity affix. Run 42 grants a Lightning Skiller Grand Charm with 6 to Dexterity, Laying of Hands Gloves, Trang's Belt. Continuing the Necro trend on run 63 with Trang's Armor, Natalia's Grim Helm. My first high rune drops on run 77 in the form of a Vex rune. Natalia's Claws, a pretty rare set item overall, drops on run 81. A relatively rare unique item drops, basically it's a budget grief. The unique Mighty Scepter, that is the Redeemer. Schaefer's Hammer drops a bit over 100 runs. I found a decent amount of these, but they are indeed pretty rare overall. On run 109, a unique Sacred Rondiche drops, the Pally Shield that is Alma Negra. Alder's Boots drops on run 112. The very next run I snab a 15% damage reduction, Dungos. A bit later on run 127, a classic D2 item drops. The Harlequin Crest Shaco. Ethereal Jade Talons drops, probably my first ethereal one, I'm not really sure though. A green Ami blesses me a Tal Rasha's Ami. A close rolled Crown of Ages in the form of the pretty rare itself set item, Griswold's Veiler Corona, drops on run 161. 3 open-socketed 44 res plus 15% ED Pally Royal Shield, an excellent dream base. 1 resistance shy off perfect. Run 176 gives me a High Lord's Wrath Amulet. On run 181, I switched to my Fire Druid. He has 203% Magic Find. Equipped with Hodo, Enigma, Phoenix and a Monarch, Mara's, Sandstorm Trek's Boots, dual Bull Kathos Rings, Arachnid Mesh Belt, Mage Fist Gloves, and a perfect rolled -15 enemy fire res, Flickering Flame, in a +3 to Fissure Antlers, Druid Pelt, giving a whopping +6 to Fissure in all. And of course CTA and a pre-buff Spirit, some elemental skillers, including some lifers, MF Small Charms, Annie, a Druid Torch, and a Geeds. The mercenary is the usual suspects, Treachery, G-Face, and of course, Ethereal Infinity. The very first Druid run, I find a non-open socketed Ethereal Colossus Vouch, nice for an easy inside base from a Larzik quest. 2 runs later, I find a Natalia's Loricated Mail Armor. The pretty rare Arcane's Valor Balrog skin drops on run 195. Tal Rasha's Belt and a Ariat's Face Slayer Guard both drop on run 203. 13 runs later, I find a Heaven's Light Mighty Scepter. A rare but useless item, the always ethereal dagger, that is Ghost Flame Legend Spike, drops on run 228. A cool little melee small charm granting 1 to 4 cold damage and 20 to life drops on run 245. Sasabi's Cobalt Redeemer, Set Cryptic Sword, and a Lightning Skiller Grand Charm both drop 5 runs later. Catching me completely by surprise on run 263 is one of the rarest items in the entire game, the unique Unearthed Wand that is the Poison Powerhouse Death's Web. It rolled +2 to poison and bone and -43 to enemy poison resistance. It's the second Death's Web I've ever found all throughout my time playing, and slightly better than my first one, literally rolling the same negative poison resistance, but instead of the 1 to poison and bone the first one I found rolled, this one rolled +2 in comparison. Some runs later of nothing much, I find my second Shaco on run 291. Medusa's Gaze Aegis Shield drops on run 295. The very next run I find a unique Balrog Spear, Demon's Arch. On run 300, I switched to my Poison Nova Necromancer with 190% magic find. The skinny pale edgy boy uses Death's Web with a poison facet, Enigma, Shaco with a poison facet, Mars Ami, Upped Homunculus with a poison facet achieving max block, Waterwalk Boots, 2 10% res FCR rings, Arachnid Mesh Belt, Trang's Gloves, CTA, and a Ethereal Spirit Monarch pre-buff shield for the style points, Annie, Torch, some poison and bone skillers, and random other MF and small charms. The Mercenary, I use Ethereal Infinity for increasing corpse explosion damage, Vamp Gaze Helm, and an Ethereal Fortitude. A Gold Rune drops on run 304. A Griswold Caduceus, a close Astrian's Caduceus drops, and a +1 Cold Skiller Grand Charm on run 308. On run 311, Tal Rasha's Swirling Crystal drops. Demon's Limb Tyrant Club, also known as the Enchant Pre-Buff Club, drops on run 316. The Barbarian Demon's Edge Destroyer Helm drops on run 339. A run later, a single rune drops. On 348, a +6% MF small charm drops. Whizspike Dagger drops a classic nostalgic D2 item 3 runs later. About 12 runs later, an Ethereal 4 open-socketed Thresher drops, followed by a Carrion Wind Ring on 373. Popping a chest exposes a 3/3 lightning facet on run 378. On run 386, I switched over to my Fire Trapper, alleviating the grind madness in pursuit of RNJESUS' blessings. The badass ninja babe is equipped with Hodo, Enigma, Mars Ami, Spirit Monarch, a +2 to assassin skills, 20 FCR, and 20 faster run walk with 13 dexterity, and some all-res socketed with a Alder's Boots, Ravenfrost Ring, Arachnid Mesh Belt, 10 FCR Ring, Mage Fist Gloves, CTA and a Spirit Buff offhand, Torch, Annie, some Fire Trapper GCs, and of course Geeds, and random small charms including MF1s. She has 179 magic find. Mercenary uses Ethereal Treachery, Vamp Gaze, and of course again Ethereal Infinity. On run 390, I get a 3/5 Fire Die Facet, a G-Face Winged Helm, and a Griswold's Heart Ornate Plate both drop on run 410. 10 runs later on 420 Blazed, Immortal King's Helm drops. Run 439 gives me a Ribcracker Quarterstaff, a very nice Fury Druid weapon when upped. The Poor Man's Enigma, the set item Nausea's Puzzler Elder Staff, drops on run 461, and I also switch back onto my Fire Source. About 20 runs later, a Bull Kathos Tribal Guardian set sword drops. On run 483, a 10 FCR rare ring sporting some dex and some res. On run 490, I actually had my first death on my source. It was my first and only time dying during these runs. The tombs at the time were terrorized, making the enemies a bit more dangerous, and I got insta-death teleporting right onto a nasty Scarab Beetle pack, exposing that sorceress Glass Cannon 1-tap. 6 runs later, quickly forgetting about my experience loss, after getting squashed by some overgrown beetles, a Jaw Rune drops, making this the 3rd Jaw Rune I've ever found in all of my time playing Diablo 2. The other 2 I found were both in the Chaos Sanctuary. The first one I ever found dropped off Diablo himself. The second one was off a random Finger Mage boss pack. 3 runs later, I find a not very useful Black Hades Chaos Armor. 2 runs after that, I get the set Lacquered Plate, that is of course Tal Rasha's armor. 30 runs later, the oh so common Zod rune drops. Not even 50 runs apart from a Jaw rune drop, making this my second ever Zod rune. Finding 2 Zod runes is like Powerball chances in D2, and honestly, this drop was pretty crazy. The one I found before this was around 2 weeks ago and was running random terror zones. These insane rare drops always seem random and provide that oh so sweet addicting carrot on a stick in Diablo 2. Skulder's Ire unique russet armor drops for me on run 548, a pretty iconic magic find armor. Bonehue Ogre Axe drops on run 559. On run 564, I put that Jaw rune I found to use on a 45 res Dream base Pally shield, and did a bit of runs trying out a dual Dream Tesladin for my first time. He's using Grief, Fortitude, High Lord's Amulet, Dream in a Demon Head, Dream in a Sacred Rondochet with 45 all resistance, Gore Rider Boots, Life Leech Ring with Strength and Resistance and other stats, 15% DR String of Ears, Raven Frost, Laying on Hands Gloves, CTA and a Spirit Buff Shield in the offhand, Torch Annie, and other random MF and other stat small charms along with a Geeds, for a total magic find of 142%. My mercenary uses Ethereal Fortitude, G-Phase, and a Ethereal Reaper's Toll. Ormus's Robes and a Credendum Mithril Coil both drop back to back on run 567. The 600th run drops a 7% MF small charm. 4 runs later, my second goal rune drops from a chest. 5 runs later, a lion branded plain Pally combat skiller drops. Run 611 gives me a dual leech rare ring with some res and other stats. I've never found anything godly in terms of dual leech, but it's something. Another Die Fire Faucet drops a couple runs later, giving 4/4. On run 615, I leveled up twice on this paladin, so I decided to switch back to my fire source. Run 637 gives me an Ohm rune. It comes out of its slumber, popping out of a chest. I find a decent amount of Ohm runes in chests for some reason. Run 649, a Life Leech / Fire Res / AR rare ring drops, and a Hell Rack Colossus crossbow both drop on run 649. On run 660, I get my second Talrash's Ami, and some Laying on Hand gloves. The very next run, a Nature's Peace ring drops. 4 runs later, I get another Talrasha's Swirling Crystal. Going through a bit of a dry spell, some runs later, on run 696, I get my second Demon's Edge Destroyer, followed by another repeat loot item. The Alma Negra Sacred Rondochet Pally Shield drops again. On run 709, I get a Mavina's Belt. On run 725, I get, I believe, my second Medusa's Gaze Aki's Shield. Another unique amulet identifies as a Cat's Eye Ami, just a couple of runs later. Run 748, I get a Lightsaber Phase Blade. Run 762, I get a Bull Kathos Sacred Charge Set Sword. On run 798, I have to admit, fatigue started to kick in after finally hitting level 97 on my fire source. After this run, I kinda just switched back and forth between some characters to alleviate the grind before finishing the last 100 runs or so with the safety of my 5k plus health Fire Druid. A classic item in Diablo 2 drops in the form of Lidless Grim Shield on run 810. 7 runs later, I get another 6% MF small charm with +8 to mana. Blood Moon Elegant Blade drops on run 832, followed by some 35 MF Chanseys. On run 848, I identify a 29% Nagel ring, not bad. On run 925, I get another Ohm rune, my second one, from a chest. Nearing the end, I really thought I wasn't gonna get anything noteworthy, until on run 951, A unique spired helm identifies as a Nightwing's helm. This is the second Nightwing's veil I've ever found. 4 runs later, I find a already Larzic 4 open-socketed Ethereal Colossus Vouge. I use these bases at this point for style points on my Ethereal Insight Iron Golems. On run 962, I find a plain bow and crossbow skiller, Grand Charm. 2 runs later, I find the really cool, insane amount of strength required, plus 7 to elemental skills, Earthshifter. Run 970, I get the useless but relatively rare and awesomely named Gut Siphon Demon Crossbow. The very last noteworthy item that drops is on run 985, in the form of a unique amulet, a crescent moon. Sadly, I didn't get any Maras in these runs. Thanks for watching. Do you think RNJESUS bestowed thee with thy goblins loot blessing? I'd say yes overall. The runes were crazy. Getting a Zod, a Jaw, 2 Ohms, 2 Goals, a Vex, and a rune is pretty good for just 1,000 runs, at least in my experience playing. In terms of unique items, it wasn't a bust completely. Getting some big heavy hitters like Death's Web, Nightwings, and some other rare, just not so desired or heavily used items, yet still cool nonetheless. I actually only need 5 more items in Diablo 2 to complete the Holy Grail. I plan on making much more videos spanning across all different games in the future, including more Diablo 2 MF runs, so consider liking and subscribing or leaving a comment on what you think about my luck in these runs. Have a good one.